Continuing our Lenten theme, how can we use our imaginations to become better people? To tell us, I'm joined by resident scholar at the University of Dallas and author of the new book, The Scandal of Holiness, Renewing Your Imagination in the Company of Literary Saints. Jessica HOOTEN WILSON joins us. Hi, Jess. I want to begin with your interest in holiness. You say in a recent interview that your interest arose out of a Fulbright Award. You were teaching at a university in Czechoslovakia, and people there recognized you as being from the U.S., but they had no idea you were a Christian, and that bothered you. Why?
Yes. So I was in the Czech Republic and they recognized I was American. You know, I wasn't smiling or I was smiling too much. I wasn't keeping my stone face the way that a lot of them had kind of been enculturated to do. So they recognized that, but nothing about my life struck them as Christian. And when I was teaching at Charles University, and I would teach these religious novels, these novels with these holy characters and holy fools. They were stunned that I could actually believe these things. How can an educated professor want to live like this? You know, what looked foolish in their eyes. And I realized that's what I needed to be doing. I needed to look more foolish in my own life, to look more like the characters I was teaching so that I could actually say, yeah, I believe this. This is true.
In your introduction, you write about the current culture and the reading of great books. This is from the intro. Somehow the call to read great books has become a rebellious mantra. Once an innocuous pastime, reading literature in our current culture is a way of protesting. Can you imagine anything more countercultural in this society than to say no thank you to Netflix? Every culture has heroes. Every culture chooses whom to remember and to revere. As Christians, we've not lost our capacity to adore heroes, but we are uncomfortable venerating anyone unless it's an NFL player, the latest Christian guru, or a superhero. If the church decides not to uplift saints, its members will worship the alternative heroes offered by culture. How difficult is it to get people to read, especially young people who are surrounded by so many distractions and gadgets and social media, to say nothing of these secular-generated heroes?
Yeah, it's become the norm to say, I want to turn my brain off. I want to shut myself off from the world. And yet what they mean by that is that they're going to turn on their devices. They're going to turn on their screens. So you're actually letting go of parts of yourself to be plugged in, to be slaved away to something that is controlling your imagination, that's making you less active and less contemplative. And the call to be a Christian is to be one who meditates on words, prays words, and hopefully leads you towards, you know, a greater vision beyond yourself, your place in the community, your place among other persons. And a lot of these devices just feed this idea that what you want matters, who you want, you know, what you want to read doesn't matter as much as what you consume and what you produce. And it really makes you less of a person than the scriptures call you to be.
Tell me about the writers that attract you. You've written books about Walker Percy, who lived across the lake from me, Flannery O'Connor, Graham Greene, C.S. Lewis. Your book is very ecumenical, but there are an awful lot of Catholic writers. How do their works illustrate holiness for you?
Well, the Catholics are in touch with things, you know. The Catholic Church never lost its priority on the things. And then, of course, what those things signify is part and parcel of the thing itself. And so a lot of Catholic fiction feels very comfortable with the significance within matter in a way that the Protestant tradition kind of broke away and separated the matter from the spirit in a lot of the ways that they worship and the way that they talk about things. And so you have fiction that's more didactic, that's more focused on prose or sermons, whereas the Catholic fiction really digs down underneath things and looks beyond the surface to say, okay, what does it mean? Why does it matter? The enchanted worldview that was kind of retained by the Catholic Church. And I think that that's something that a lot of people are missing. You know, we're surrounded by a world that is driven by advertising and a Gnostic universe in which you are just the persona that you represent on social media. And fiction really pulls us back into a story in which what we're doing matters and how we do it matters.
You write that C.S. Lewis is the 20th century's primary defender of the imagination. You go on to say that it's important Imagination is important. And while Christians love talking about how to live better, how to help people, how to fight injustice, and so on, we too often do so as an intellectual exercise. We push imagination to the side as fantastical and unnecessary. Fiction offers an escape and has nothing to do with the practice of faith. But the imagination has everything to do with our faith. How we imagine our God, our world, and ourselves affects how we live and how we die. Have we lost that Christian, that Catholic imagination? I mean, Tolkien and Lewis were men of faith who shared a love of literature and fantasy. As someone who teaches at a university, how important is it to have a liberal arts education at a university level that features courses in classical literature, particularly the literature you're writing about?
Absolutely. So the liberal arts, I mean, that's the arts of freedom. It's practicing having a free soul. That's what they're supposed to do, is that they train you to desire the things that are in line with who you are. Whereas a lot of what the world does is try to enslave you to things that make you less than what you are. So imagination is key to really change people's desires. William Wordsworth said, "What we will love, they will love, and we will teach them how." Education should be all about training the loves to love what is worth loving. And our stories, we really enter into a world in which what we're supposed to love, what is true, what is beautiful, what excites our soul and really calls us to be grander and greater than we truly are. Something that is beyond ourselves is exciting. And I think those grand adventures, the adventure of sanctity, is the greatest call, and education should be leading us towards that call.
In the book, you write about the role of suffering in the search for God, and how some writers are particularly adept at writing well about suffering. You point to Flannery O'Connor, who suffered with lupus her entire writing career. She had this to say about suffering in her characters. She wrote, "It has always seemed necessary to me to throw the weight of circumstances against the characters I favor. The friends of God suffer." How can literature like this help us not only understand suffering, but see how it draws us to God?
Yeah, well, suffering is part of the human condition. It is the state of the fallen world. So we can't, control that. We can't get out of all suffering. And the illusion that we can, I think, is problematic, because then suffering surprises us, when in reality, it's something that should be part of our lives and not something that we flee from. What's the horror that Flannery O'Connor is always talking about is the fact that God can redeem all suffering, that no suffering is beyond his ability to use it to instrumentalize that suffering for his good. And that is a scandalous thing to say, but it's absolutely true. The worst of suffering God can use for the greatest of his glory.
Talk to me about something you touch on in the book, and it's this, you say there are a number of Christians who they're always looking for the rainbow, over Noah's Ark, and they don't want to, experience the precursor or talk about it. I call this the fake literature that moves from perfection to perfection, unlike the more gritty realization of faith lived that Flannery O'Connor or this new Father Stu movie that's coming to theaters touches on. What do we lose by focusing on the cross without the suffering? The happy cross, as someone once said.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, this is the whole story of the world. The story that's revealed to us in Scripture is a story that is about fall and redemption. It's about Good Friday and resurrection. And if we just move from resurrection to resurrection to resurrection, I mean, what is being brought back to life? You have to have what is dead be brought back to life. You have to see the suffering of the cross. And without that, you have a false conception of the world. And also you have a false idea of how to enter into that. I mean, suffering will make you uncomfortable. Death will scare you. But if you believe that on the other side of death is resurrection, then you have nothing to fear in this world.
Yeah. What do you hope readers get from your book? Why did you write it?
I hope they love more. I hope that my book encourages people to see what is worth loving. It is a very dark world. It's a dark time, and people have definitely suffered a lot in the last couple of years. I hope the book instead turns us to some of these beautiful souls and says, the adventure of pursuing holiness is a great call, and the call is yours. And if you follow it, the Lord will grace you with an increased capacity to love others.
I've read that you're working with the estate of Flannery O'Connor to complete her unfinished third novel, Why Do the Heathen Rage? How do you even undertake a challenge like this?
I really enjoyed it. I can't really separate my voice from Flannery very much. That's actually been the criticism of my first book, was that the reader couldn't tell the difference between Flannery and me, because I have been reading her since I was 15. So for me, learning how to read and how to write has come so much from Flannery, and it's just been such a privilege to get to see what she was working on, to see that unfinished story. Karl Rahner says, all we bring to God are unfinished symphonies. And you really get to see Flannery's unfinished symphony. And hopefully I get to share the unfinished symphony in the next year or two with everyone.
Wow, how cool is that? Well, we'll be looking forward to that. Meanwhile, The Scandal of Holiness, Renewing Your Imagination in the Company of Literary Saints by Jessica HOOTEN WILSON, is available now at bookstores everywhere and online. Jessica, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.